Hey friend, if I were to come up to you right now and ask, "Hey, how's life been?" What would you tell me? Maybe life feels like an emotional roller coaster right now and you are just trying to figure out which way is up. Or maybe you feel like you haven't been able to catch a break. Things just keep happening over and over and you're just like, "Oh, when will life feel calm again? When can I just feel like I can recover from the chaos of everything?" Today, I'm going to ask a question that has the potential to reorient your life in times when it just doesn't feel like life is happening the way you hoped it would. And this is a question that has reoriented me throughout my life in times when I just felt like, how did I get here? Or how can I make life into what I had hoped it would be? So here's the question I want to ask you. Are you living life fully awake right now? There are parts of us that have become so ingrained by our past, and it causes us to go on autopilot through life. We're just going through life reacting from our survival skills or from the stories from our past, and we're not actually consciously walking through life fully awake, able to make choices that feel aligned with who we are. Here's what I mean by this. Okay, here's an example. Maybe you learned to manage conflict by becoming small. So, maybe there's a lump that rises in your throat and you wish you could scream, or you wish you could say what you need to say to the person you're in conflict with, but instead you swallow it. You stuff it down, tell yourself it doesn't matter, and that you have to become small in order to stay safe. And maybe as a kid, that actually did help you stay safe. Maybe you needed to become small in order to survive a caregiver who was physically violent. Or maybe they were emotionally violent. They did violence to your view of who you were as a person through their words. And the only way to make it stop was to just become small and let it pass over you instead of responding. But what is it doing now? Okay, it worked as a child, but what is it doing in your life now? What is reacting from these survival skills and going on autopilot, stealing from your life today? Living a life on autopilot robs you of your ability to make choices, to be able to choose how you're going to build your life. It robs you of your ability to live from an authentic place where you are actually you. You're not some person that you had to become in order to survive or avoid a person's anger. You are you. Okay? Living on autopilot robs you from the ability to give and receive love open-heartedly, right? Like our survival skills taught us how to survive. It's self-protective in nature. It is not an open-hearted way of living. And you needed that. You needed to survive. And now you get to make choices in life. If you choose to wake up to your life, you get to make choices where you are no longer protecting yourself, but instead opening your heart, living from an authentic place, and responding rather than reacting in life. Now you might be asking like, okay, Christy, that sounds great. Like, of course I want to be awake in life. Like, of course I want to be able to respond and build my life into the thing that gives me joy. I don't want to just protect myself and get to the end of my life realizing I didn't live it all. But how do I get there? Right? That's the question. Like, practically speaking, how do I live fully awake? Living life fully awake involves awareness. Being conscious in life rather than sleepwalking and going through the day on autopilot. Okay, so awareness. Here's what awareness is not. Okay, I'm not talking about overanalyzing your story, hoping that knowing it in your brain will translate into you becoming this person who feels whole and alive and joyful. Like, no, I'm not asking you to just analyze everything and have it all appear in your brain. And it's not simple head knowledge, okay? It's not about reading all the books and having all the knowledge in the world. This matters. Like, yes, we need to know ourselves, but it's not everything. It's one piece of the puzzle. And maybe you're noticing that. Like, maybe you have read all the books, you've done all the workbooks, you've really gotten to know what happened to you and how it formed you, but it's not translating. It's here, but you don't know how to draw that connection to your heart. You don't know how to let it flow out of you in a really practical way. There's a disconnect between your head and your heart, and you don't know how to descend down into your heart yet. And this is what I mean, okay? Awareness is not just the head knowledge. When I say that living fully awake and being conscious in your life involves awareness, here's what I do mean. It is both the head knowledge about your story and the body knowledge of what it feels like to be in your own skin, to live life as you. One of the things about trauma is it disconnects us from ourselves. So you might experience this actually. If you realize, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know I had all this tension in my body, or I had no idea I was like clenching my jaw until I went to the dentist and they asked me, are you grinding your teeth? And you're like, oh, I guess, yeah, now that I think about it, I think I do. We lose touch with what's happening in our body. You might be in a therapy session and your therapist is like, what are you noticing in your body? And you're like, I feel good. I feel bad. I don't really know anything other than good or bad. That's an example of being so disconnected from your body. So we need to be able to grow in that awareness of what does it feel like to live in your own skin. Awareness in its fullest sense is about being in the present moment. You're not lost in the past or waiting for the future. And that's the danger with trauma, right? Like you get stuck in your past. You see the present moment in relation to everything that happened to you. And you act in the present moment or react in the present moment from your past. Or maybe you become so anxious and fearful that you spend your present days, just kind of trying to safeguard yourself against all the possibilities of what might happen in the future. You're so scared. You're so worried. You're scared of opening up to someone because, well, I got hurt before and I need to make sure that never happens again. So it's about being in this moment right now. It's the only moment that actually exists. Awareness is about slowing things down enough so that you can see life as it is in the moment. Okay, it's about seeing life and your life clearly so that you can actually have the chance to respond rather than react. It's a difference between having this blind reaction and having a creative, thoughtful response in life. Okay? And I mean, think about it. Like, how many times in this past year did you find yourself in a conflict with your partner and later realizing, oh my gosh, that was not about my partner at all. It was actually about something totally unrelated to them from my past. And so you go to your partner and you apologize saying, oh, I'm so sorry. This wasn't about you at all. This just reminded me of that time when XYZ, this thing happened. Okay. How many times did you shame spiral thinking, like I'm just always going to be like this. I'm always going to be so reactive or impulsive. What if instead of reacting and then later trying to clean up the mess that happened because you reacted, or shame spiraling because you reacted, what if you were no longer being swept away by your old survival patterns, but you were actually so acutely aware of what was real in that moment and what was happening in that moment, that you had the ability to access that creative, loving, compassionate, responsive, thoughtful part of you. The real you. Like, what would that change about your relationships? What would that change about your life? Like, seriously, take a moment and maybe like pull out a piece of paper and just jot down, what would my life look like? What would be different if I was operating from this thoughtful, creative, present part of me, not this reactive, impulsive, scared part of me? Okay, I imagine there would be a lot of things different. I imagine you would have a life that looks a lot more like what you were hoping life would look like. So at the end of the day, awareness is this invitation to come home to yourself, to actually live in your skin in this moment, not to live as this past self reacting to past events, or this person who's so scared and anxious about what's going to happen in the future that they're sabotaging everything in the present moment in order to protect themselves from this imagined future. Okay, it's about coming home to right now, what you are experiencing in this present moment. You deserve to live a life where you feel like you're fully you and you are fully awake. You deserve to get to the end of your life and look back and go, whoa, I really lived my life. I took advantage of every moment. And this is not about doing all the adrenaline crazy things or having an Instagram worthy life. It is about, did you show up to the moment? Were you here? So if you suspect that maybe you've been living on autopilot and some childhood trauma has been sabotaging your ability to live in this moment and to respond in your relationships from a place that is actually you, then I want to invite you to take this step today and take my free quiz called Is Childhood Trauma Sabotaging Your Relationship? Upon completing this quiz, you're going to receive my free guide for navigating trauma when it does show up in your relationship. And these tips and tools are going to help draw you back into awareness and back into the present moment so that you can be awake and responsive and really embody this conscious love. You can really embody what it looks like for you, the fully alive, fully awake version of you, to show up in your relationship. So go ahead and look back at that list of things that you said, if I were to be fully awake, this is how my life would be different. Take a look at that. And then spend some time trying to grow in this awareness and see if you can work closer to that vision, because I believe you can. Well, friend, it is always a joy having this opportunity to walk alongside of you and to be able to be a part of your journey in coming home to yourself and feeling fully awake and alive in your life. So if you would like to show some love, go ahead and write a comment below or share this with a friend. I would love to hear from you. Well, until next time, make it simple. Just come back to now, the present moment, and let that be enough. You are listening to the Trauma Uncomplicated podcast, where we untangle the ways complex trauma formed you and your relationships and give you the tools to get your grounded, true self back in the driver's seat. If you are ready to take that next step and dive deep into your healing, visit relationalhealingco.com, where we offer tools, resources, and personalized coaching to help you heal your trauma and thrive in your relationships. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered medical or psychological advice. If you are in the United States and you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988 to reach the National Crisis Hotline.